If you have ever witnessed a moment where a room full of people collectively chose silence, then you already know how loud that silence can be, how it presses against your ears harder than any shout. And that is exactly how it felt the second Daniel Mercer's hand struck the edge of the table and sent a glass crashing to the floor in the middle of Rosie's diner. Because in that instant conversations died midward, forks hovered halfway to mouths, and every pair of eyes flickered up only to quickly look away again, as if pretending not to see could somehow erase what was happening. Lily Hart was the one standing closest to him, a 22-year-old waitress with her hair pulled back into a tight ponytail and a pale blue uniform. She had ironed carefully that morning before leaving the tiny apartment she shared with her mother, telling herself that if she just worked hard enough, kept her head down long enough, life would eventually soften its sharp edges. But life rarely announces when it plans to test you, and that afternoon it chose to test her in front of an entire room. The diner had begun the day like any other, sunlight pouring through wide windows and glinting off chrome trim, the scent of frying bacon and fresh coffee weaving into the air, regulars sitting in their favorite booths talking about weather and politics as if the world beyond those walls were manageable, predictable, safe. Lily had been moving between tables with practiced efficiency, balancing plates along her arm, apologizing for delays that weren't her fault, smiling even when customers snapped their fingers for refills, because tips meant groceries, and groceries meant her mother's electricity bill stayed paid, and dignity was a luxury she often postponed. Daniel arrived just after noon, stepping out of a sleek black car that didn't belong on the diner's cracked asphalt lot, his tailored jacket immaculate, sunglasses still perched on his nose even after he stepped inside, as if the world were his stage and he expected applause for simply existing. He chose a corner booth and immediately began snapping his fingers for attention, his voice loud enough to carry across the room as he criticized the menu, the decor, the speed of service, anything that would remind everyone nearby that he believed himself superior to it all. Lily approached with the same polite tone she offered everyone, writing down his order carefully, but Daniel seemed less interested in food and more interested in performance, each complaint sharper than the last, each correction delivered loudly enough for neighboring tables to hear. And when a glass of soda slipped slightly from her grip and splashed against the table, barely wetting his sleeve, it was as if he had been handed permission to escalate. He stood abruptly, chair legs scraping harshly against the tile towering over her with a smirk that twisted into something uglier, and before anyone could process what was unfolding, he shoved her forward so hard that her hip struck the edge of the booth and her shoulder collided with the sticky tabletop, the crack of impact slicing through the diner like a gunshot. For one suspended second, no one moved, not the elderly couple near the window, not the construction workers at the counter, not even the manager who had stepped halfway out of his office before freezing, calculating liability instead of morality. And Lily felt the world narrow to a ringing in her ears and the sting blooming along her arm, her breath. Shallow humiliation hotter than the pain itself, as tears blurred the room into streaks of color. Daniel raised his arm again, not because she had done anything wrong, but because he was accustomed to consequences bending around him, accustomed to wealth cushioning every fall. And in that awful pause, Lily heard a familiar whisper in her mind telling her that this was how it always worked, that powerful people pushed and ordinary people endured. What none of them noticed at first was the quiet click of the back door opening, the soft chime almost lost beneath the tension, and a man stepped inside wearing simple jeans and a dark jacket, his movements calm and deliberate, as though chaos did not intimidate him, but simply informed his next decision. At his side walked a German shepherd with alert eyes and a disciplined stillness that suggested training. And the man paused only long enough to take in the scene. The raised arm, the trembling waitress, the collective paralysis of the room. His name was Marcus Reed, though no one there knew it yet, and he carried himself with the quiet gravity of someone who had served in places where hesitation cost lives, where clarity mattered more than volume. He didn't shout or rush forward dramatically. He simply walked toward, Daniel with measured steps, and something about that steadiness shifted the air itself. Daniel turned, irritation flashing across his face at being interrupted. But when his eyes met Marcus's unwavering gaze, the smirk faltered. It wasn't aggression he saw, but certainty, the kind that doesn't need witnesses to validate it. Marcus stopped just close enough for his presence to be undeniable and spoke in a voice low but firm, telling Daniel to step back and lower his hand, and though the words were simple, they carried weight not of authority claimed, but authority earned. The room seemed to exhale as attention redirected toward Daniel, the spell of silence cracking under the pressure of a single person refusing to look away, and for the first time, Daniel appeared unsure, glancing around to see that the same crowd he had expected to remain passive was now watching him with open disapproval. His power built on intimidation and indifference dissolved under scrutiny. He muttered something about misunderstanding and attempted to brush past, but Marcus held his ground without touching him, without escalating, simply making it clear that the line had been drawn. And within moments the manager, finally jolted into action by the shift in momentum, stepped forward to demand Daniel leave, his voice shaky but present. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance after someone at the counter dialed the police, and Daniel's confidence drained completely as he realized that his wealth would not shield him from public accountability this time. He stormed out under the weight of collective eyes, his earlier bravado reduced to an embarrassed retreat. Lily was helped to her feet by a regular named Mrs. Alvarez, who had watched from her usual booth for years. And though Lily's legs trembled, they did not give out, and she found herself looking up at Marcus with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief, because in that moment he was not a stranger, but a barrier between her and something far worse. He didn't ask for thanks, didn't lecture or posture. He simply nodded to ensure she was steady and then stepped back, allowing her space to reclaim herself. The police arrived, statements were taken, and Daniel's name, once spoken with casual admiration in certain circles, was now attached to a report that would follow him longer than he expected. In the days that followed, the story spread beyond the diner, shared by customers who had filmed portions of the confrontation, posted online with captions about courage and accountability, and the narrative shifted from one of humiliation to one of resilience. Lily returned to work after a brief recovery, her bruises fading but her posture subtly altered, a new steadiness in the way she carried herself, because she had learned something powerful that afternoon. That invisibility is not permanent, and that silence can be broken by a single act of refusal. The diner implemented new policies, clearer protections for staff, training that emphasized immediate intervention over hesitation, and the manager, chastened by his own delay, began to understand that safeguarding dignity was more important than avoiding conflict. As for Marcus, he slipped back into his routine without seeking recognition, returning to his service unit where his work continued quietly, heroism unannounced and unrewarded beyond the knowledge that he had acted when others froze. And if you're watching this story now, maybe it's because you too have felt the weight of silence in a room. Maybe you have wondered what difference one person could make. And this is your reminder that sometimes the most powerful force isn't loud at all, but steady, present, and unwilling to look away. If stories like this matter to you, if you believe courage and compassion still deserve to be told, then subscribe to our channel and share this message. Because every time we highlight moments like these, we strengthen the idea that dignity is worth defending, that accountability is possible, and that even in an ordinary diner on an ordinary afternoon, a single choice can rewrite the ending.